Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam, hachol v'hayam, rish rush shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. Those beautiful words were written by one of the greatest martyrs of Jewish people, Chana Senesh. Chana Senesh flew into enemy territory to parachute into Yugoslavia during the Second World War in order to help save the Jews of Hungary, who were about to be deported to the German death camp of Auschwitz. Chana Senesh was arrested, she was imprisoned, she was tortured, but she refused to reveal the details of her mission. She was eventually tried in a mock court and executed by a firing squad of the Nazis, with her eyes wide open. Shaya Lev Neroslavsky, my uncle. Yosef Osherovitz, my uncle. Rivka Mann Osherovitz, my aunt. A few weeks ago, we watched with great sadness those who gathered on September 11th at Ground Zero to remember their loved ones at the 9/11 Memorial in New York. It was heartbreaking to watch children read the names of their parents, or even worse, to listen to parents pay tribute to their murdered children from 9/11. There were approximately 3,000 names read at 9/11 that day, and it took about 6 hours. I did the math. At a rate of 5 seconds to recite every name of all Jews that were killed in the Shoah, it would take approximately 350 days, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, nonstop. The magnitude of our loss from the Shoah is truly unimaginable. Kalman Shlomovitz, my uncle. Toiba Man Shlomovitz, my aunt. Ruvain Meltz, my uncle. Chaya Meltz, my aunt. A few months ago, as is my custom, I traveled to Poland on Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, while leading a group of adults on this year's March of the Living. During the Yizkor ceremony at Auschwitz-Birkenau, Rabbi Israel Lau spoke to us. Rabbi Lau, of course, is the former chief rabbi of Israel and a Holocaust survivor from Buchenwald. He told us that shortly after the liberation of the death camp Buchenwald, the American military invited people from the nearby city of Weimar, known as Weimar, to see the camp, to show them firsthand the results of Nazism. One of the American commanders lifted him up in the air. He was a young child, and he wanted to show the townspeople, and he exclaimed, he said, "Look at this little child. He isn't even 8 years old. Was he your enemy? What did he do to you? Was he a threat to the Third Reich? Yet you waged war against this child and killed millions just like him." To which the people cried out, "We didn't know, we didn't know." 50 years later, Rabbi Lau returned to the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Buchenwald. While imprisoned there, he had no name. He just had a number. When he returned, he came back as a free man and as a famous rabbi from Israel. There was a gathering of survivors to commemorate the liberation of the camp. After he spoke, he insisted before leaving on taking a walk from the center of town to the entrance of Buchenwald. It took him 8 minutes. That's how close the killing took place from the center of the great cultured city of Weimar, Germany, to the gates of hell. 50 years later, he asked, how could they not have known what was going on here? And in his remarks, he cried out, "We shall never forget. We shall never forget. But equally, we are not authorized to forgive you." Upon his return to Israel, people asked him, How can you return to your worst nightmare? He told everyone that he simply returned to Buchenwald because he needed to remember all of those martyrs who had no names at the time and for whom no one was there to recite Kaddish after their death. At that moment, I looked over to my dear friend Martin Baranek, who came with us on the March of the Living. I glanced at the numbers tattooed on his arm when he was a prisoner at Birkenau. And you know, when he was a prisoner at Birkenau, he had no name either, just the number tattooed on his arm by the Nazis. But on that day, he stood up tall and he returned to Auschwitz as a free man, a man with a great name. And this is why some of us gather here today to recite Yizkor, to remember those who left this world in a cruel and tragic way. Our loved ones are never forgotten. Their lives did make a difference. We can never forget, but at the same time, we are not authorized to forgive their killers. Mendel Mann, my uncle. Chava Mann, my aunt. Having the opportunity to travel to Poland on Yom HaShoah, accompanied by its survivors, to experience firsthand about their tragedy and then their triumph of survival, is only possible while being part of the Leo Martin March of the Living program. And while in Israel, we always make sure to visit and pay tribute to the gravesite of Chana Senesh, our great martyr, and her gravesite on Mount Herzl, and to pay tribute to a true heroine of Jewish people. I urge you to send your teens on this powerful trip of a lifetime. I encourage you to go on the March of the Living as part of an adult group. Over the years, I've had the great privilege. I went on the march 4 times with our dear departed Leo Martin, one of the trustees of our synagogue. On 4 other trips, I accompanied our dear members, David and Irene Marmelstein, who shared their stories with us about their suffering during the Shoah and their ultimate triumph of survival. Risa Naroslavsky Mann, my grandmother. Yitzchok Yaakov Mann, my grandfather. The names that I read here today are only 11 of my 27 family members that were killed in the Shoah. My parents used to say to me, "Gedenk mein Kind und vergess nicht." Remember, my child, and never forget. As I age, the impact of the Shoah looms larger and larger. For it's hard for me to imagine, but I have lived twice as long for those that I'm named for. I can never take my life for granted for even a moment without remembering how misfortunate my grandparents, my uncles, my aunts, and my cousins were during the Holocaust. So I'm here today to remember, to make sure that they are never forgotten. Others are here today to remember their lost family members who have left a gaping hole in their lives. Our beloved Cantor Kula lost his dear father only a few weeks ago. He mourns his father's passing, and today he and his brothers will recite Yizkor for his dad for the first time. Although he's on the bima by himself, he is surrounded by our congregation, and he's not alone. We are all here today to remember and to make sure that our loved ones are never forgotten. Gedenk und vergess nicht. Remember and do not forget. Gedenk und vergess nicht. Remember and never forget.